box number, box number
17.
So what's in your box? Well, this week we start with some wild celery. Now this is more of a spice or a herb than a vegetable or a salad, and in fact it makes me think that all we've achieved by cultivating celery is to water down something which really needed no improvement. Now what I'd do with this, I'd pick the leaflets off and chop them down and use them as a herb, just add them to dishes just before serving. And the leaf stalk, I would chop that down and use that as a base vegetable with, you know, like carrots and onions, things like that, just like you would celery, but it's going to give more flavour to the dish. Also I'd chop these down and use them as a crunchy and very flavoursome aspect of salads. Now just a word of warning that this plant does have a very deadly poisonous lookalike called hemlock water dropwort. So please make sure you know the difference between this and hemlock water dropwort before you think to go out and forage it for yourself. And then once again we have some dulse seaweed, which this week we're going to use to make a dulse tapenade. And then for the second week we have some girolles or chanterelles from the Highlands of Scotland. Can't really do better than mushrooms on toast with pretty much any kind of wild mushroom, and that's exactly what we're going to do with these. And next we have some hogweed seeds, and again we're going to be using the fully mature brown hogweed seeds ground down. It's amazing that the only use that's any record of in the British Isles for this is to flavour beer. It's a perfectly respectable use, but there's so much more that can be done. And this week we're using another Middle Eastern recipe, and we're going to use a strained yoghurt flavoured with wild celery and hogweed seeds, or as it's known in Persian cuisine, golpar. And then some bilberries, otherwise known as windberries, whortleberries, blaeberries, wild blueberries and frowen. And we're here in our pack room. You can see how they're all packed up here at Forager HQ. What can I say about these? But they are delicious and highly nutritious. More nutrients in those than in the cultivated varieties. And the best way of serving these was one told me by a friend who used to live on the outskirts of a forest, and Dad used to say, dessert is in the forest, and they'd just go and graze on the bilberries until they couldn't eat anymore. And some wood sorrel. And we're back in the woods at a slightly different patch of wood sorrel. And in fact, this is a plant that does seem to move around. It's strange, but you have a patch of wood sorrel and a few years later it's disappeared, but you look around the forest and find it's reappeared somewhere else. It's something I've spoken to woodland ecologists about. They don't seem to be able to offer an explanation, but that's where it happens. Last week I mentioned about detaching the leaflets from the stalk. There's actually a historical basis for that. In the past, chefs used to love these stalks broken into sort of matchstick sized pieces, and they used them for three reasons: the texture and the lemony flavour and the attractive appearance. But then they'd move to a region where they couldn't get any wood sorrel. They'd try and replicate this by chopping vegetables as finely as they possibly could. And they gave rise to the technique which is called to julienne, it being a matter of pride for chefs to chop things finely enough to resemble these wood sorrel stalks. And this week we're going to use the leaflets and the stalks to garnish our bilberry fool. And lastly, sea purslane. And again, here we are in the pack room. This is one of our perennial favourites. Salty, succulent leaf, works in pretty much any savoury context. You just have to pick the leaves down from the woody stems. And also, it's just now in seed. These are also salty and quite succulent. Pick those down and sprinkle them on. They're also pretty delicious.